Okay. So at this point, as I was saying, we have downloaded the files that we want to set up in today's class. One is a .iso file. That is an optical media file that we can use to install software from, like we did with Debian. The other one is an OVA file. This stands for Open Virtual Appliance. And these files can actually be imported into VirtualBox much more easily than the process of installing. We will be using OVA files mostly when we come to do our pen testing in these classes. Let's import the OVA file first because that's nice and easy. In VirtualBox, under File, there is the Import Appliance option. You can also hit Control-I, but it is under File, Import Appliance. And you simply go through your file system to wherever you downloaded your OVA file. As you can see, there's a lot of OVA files that we are going to look at this semester. By and large, our activities are going to be on the OVA files. Okay? So we're going to select the first one, which is the Metasploitable OVA file. Select and click Open and click Next. You can change the settings here, but we're not going to worry about these settings. These are fine for us. So again, how did I do that? Go File, Import Appliance, click on the little folder icon along the right edge, and navigate through your file system to where your downloads are. I put my downloads on my D drive in a specific folder. Select, in this case, the Metasploitable OVA file, Open, and Next. And then you can change these settings, but they're going to be fine by and large for what we need. We'll make some minor adjustments after it's imported. You simply click on the Import button, and depending on what kind of hard drive you have, this is a very, very quick process. I've got a solid-state hard drive. It runs very, very fast, and I'm done. Okay? Normally, you verify everything, all right? 1 gig of RAM is enough. 1 processor is enough. The display is fine. We don't need to change that. The storage should be fine. We shouldn't have to do anything with the storage. The only thing we ever really need to do is the network. Now, you can do 2 adapters, but when you import your environment, I hope you can all see this document here. This is the typical setup we have for our attacks going forward. Inside of Windows, we run VirtualBox. Inside of VirtualBox, we will run our Kali and we will run our target machine. Our Kali is going to need to talk to the internet. We're going to have to do some research. So we need a network card that can talk to the internet. And this is how we set up Debian as well, so it should be familiar. So you have 1 adapter talking on NAT to the internet. We're also going to set up Kali with a second network card talking on the host-only network. And anytime we add a machine to attack, we have that machine talking on the host-only network as well, which means Kali can attack it, and Windows going through the host-only network can attack it as well. Okay? This is the default setup that we are going to do with our attack going forward. We run Windows. Inside of Windows, we run VirtualBox. We'll have Kali with 2 network adapters, and our attack machines, the OVA files that we import, will only have 1 network card on the host-only network. So the fact that it is on our host-only network and that promiscuous mode is set to allow all is good. Sometimes we have to specify host-only. Sometimes we have to specify the promiscuous mode. It depends on the VM. But everything looks good here, so we can click on OK or Cancel. So now we have a machine that we can target. Let us now install Debian. Go to File and, go to Machine and New. Okay, you can also click on the new icon right here, or you can just go Control N. I don't care, but we want to create a new virtual machine. To be honest, there is a version of Kali that we can download and simply import as an OVA file. I would rather you install than import Kali. But to be honest, there is a version of Kali on that kali.org website in downloads that allows you to import Kali as well. If you struggle with the install, there is one you can import. I would rather you install with me, however. Okay? So, when it comes to installing an operating system, you need to specify the type and you need to specify the version. But as you probably saw before, if you type in something like Ubuntu, it'll say, oh, you want Linux Ubuntu. Kali is based on Ubuntu. So when I go new for Kali, I always go UB so that it says, oh, you want a 64-bit version of Ubuntu Linux. Perfect. I can delete that and I can simply type in Kali. You guys are section 1, correct? Yeah. So I'm going to type in Kali section 1, just like that. You can type in whatever you want. You click on next. It recommends 1 gig. That's nowhere near enough. If you can do 8 gig, that's good. You can only really do 8 gig if you've got 16 gig of RAM. Okay? If you've got 16 gig of RAM, give 8 gig to Kali, please. If you've got 32 gig of RAM like I do, you can give yourself more, but 8 gig is a lot. If you've only got 8 gig of RAM on your laptop, you are going to struggle in this class, but only give 4, okay? So 8 gig is lots for me. If it's too much, you can scale it back in the future, but it impacts performance. 8 gig is a nice number for what we need to do. Click on next. You wish to create a virtual disk. The default is fine and create. Virtual disk image
Hello,
is...
Stephen.
Yeah.
Which folder we have to select? I mean, which drive?
Sorry, show your desktop. Show me what you mean.
Okay, wait. I mean, which machine folder we have to select? Which, if I downloaded it in E drive, then I have to select E machine folder.
No. Nope. I'm going to cancel out of this. I'm going to start again. Okay? So just follow along here. If I'm going to go new, do not change the machine folder. The default is fine. If you need to change the machine folder because you want to put it somewhere else, okay. But I never touch the machine folder. Is that what you're asking about, Mohammed Faisal?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay. So I usually
I
leave
have
this...
installed.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead. Yep.
Virtual machine was installed on my as in D folder.
Okay.
So can I put it default?
You can change it, but I don't. As a general rule, I leave it on my C drive. But yes, the answer to your question, Mohammed, is you can change, or Mohammed Faisal, sorry, is that you can change this to D drive. Yes. Okay. So let's do this again.
Thank you.
Not a problem. Click on next. I'm going to give myself 8 gig. Next. I'm going to create a virtual disk. The default is fine. Virtual disk image, default is fine. Click on next. Dynamic is preferred. It's not actually fine, it's preferred. So the default here is the preferred. Click on next. It's going to recommend 10 gig. Change the 10 gig to 20 gig. 10 gig is not enough. So the default is not fine here. Change that from 10 gigabytes to 20 gigabytes. We will not use all 20. We'll use about 11 or 12 gigabytes, but 10 gigabytes is not enough. Click on create. Okay? So at this point, again, we can verify our settings. Our system, again, how did I get here? Now that my VM is created, I can select the Kali VM, click on Settings. The system is 8 gig. If you have lots of processors, you can give a second processor to yourself. You don't have to. This is not that important. 8 gig of memory is pretty important. The display, we currently have 16 megabytes. This doesn't make much of a difference, but I always give myself more video memory when I'm using a graphical interface. Storage, we've got our 20 gig hard drive here, but our CD-ROM DVD drive is empty. So we click on the word empty on the drive, and right along the left side, we click on the little icon for our optical media, and then we choose a disk file. And then you go to wherever your downloads are, and you specify the Kali that you downloaded the last couple of days, and open. And you know you have it right when it says Kali Linux 2020.4 installer net install, and it's going to be AMD64.ISO. Okay. If your optical drive icon says that, you are ready to install from that CD, or in this case DVD drive. Audio is fine. I usually turn it off. Networking, well, remember our conversation right here. Kali wants to have 2 network adapters. So I'm going to have to make sure I set up 2 adapters. One is already set up for NAT. I'm going to leave adapter 1 alone. Adapter 2, however, I need to enable and say make that a host-only adapter. And then you select the host-only Ethernet adapter. This should be all set up from your classes with Brad last semester. And then promiscuous mode, allow all. Okay? Adapter 1, NAT. Adapter 2, host-only, promiscuous mode, allow all. Okay? Serial ports you don't need. USB, don't change that. It'll cause problems. Shared folders and user interface should be fine. It's the network adapter we want to change. The display is kind of nice to change, but not important. The big one is the network adapter and the storage settings. Add a second adapter and add the optical media to your install machine. Once you've made those, you can click on OK and start your virtual machine. All right. Now, sometimes this pops up. If it does, just go through the list and specify the correct Linux install 2020 media. I have an older version of VirtualBox. Sometimes that pops up. I leave it because sometimes students see that and I want them to understand what's going on. So if it presents you with this, just go through the list of things that it showed you and select the network installers. And if it's still not there, go through the process again of selecting the ISO wherever you have it on your hard drive. And then click Start, and it should start the Kali installation process. At this point, you can start installing. Are there any questions? There is no mouse functionality right now. If you try clicking, it simply won't work because it hasn't loaded a graphical environment. It's just got a command line environment right now. So you have to hit enter with your keyboard. You can use the cursor keys, but it really is not what we need. The installer gives us everything we need in VirtualBox. So make sure graphical install is selected. The command line install is tricky, so I always recommend people to do the graphic install and hit the enter key on your keyboard, and then it's going to load the graphical environment pretty quickly. Don't worry about those warnings, they're just there. And now we have a mouse that we can use. Okay, this is the graphic install for Kali. It is similar to the graphic install for Debian. Kali is based on Ubuntu, and as I'm sure you've been told, Ubuntu is based on Debian. So there is a lot of similarity in the install, in the management tools, and in the graphical environment. A lot of similarities. Okay? Now, when it comes to the language, I always encourage my students to use English. Not because there's anything wrong with any of the other languages, but because sometimes developers don't develop their software for language packs, and it's a real problem. So if a developer somewhere built a tool and it got installed on Kali, if that developer didn't include the proper considerations for other languages, it's not going to run well. And I want you to keep something in mind. Kali is a tool set of hacker tools made by and for hackers. They are not elegant tools. They are rough. Sometimes they work, sometimes they fail. So these are not professionally developed tools. When it comes to using hacker tools and setting up a hacker tool set, it's almost 100% required to do everything in English, because some of the tools will not work if you try another language. Okay? And that's not a failing of the language packs or a problem with languages. That's a failing of developers who don't develop their tools properly. Okay? So always select English when installing Kali and continue. You can specify Canada. You can also hit C and it'll find Canada right away. So what I did is I hit C on my keyboard, it found Canada, and I can click on continue. The American English keyboard is probably fine for our use in VirtualBox. It's going to go through and it's going to start setting up a hard drive, but this is a hard drive that's only in memory. It's not actually creating a hard drive on that virtual hard disk we defined. It is simply creating space in the RAM of the operating system, in this case Windows, where it can virtualize a hard drive. It's called a RAM disk, and it's basically a hard drive emulated in the memory of your operating system. Okay? So it looks like it has a bunch of stuff on a hard drive, but really that hard drive is just a bunch of space in your memory in Windows. Now, we have two network adapters, and it wants to know which is the primary one to use during the installation. What it's trying to ask us here is, which one can I use to gain access to the internet? Which one is configured for internet access? Based on our setup here, that's the adapter that has the NAT setting, and that's the first adapter we define. So ENP0S3 is the NAT adapter. That's the one we want to use for this installation. Make sure ENP0S3 is selected and click on continue. It will then use DHCP, grab an IP address so it can talk to the internet. The IP address in VirtualBox is typically 10.0.2.50, and that's the default NAT adapter that virtual machines get for NAT IP addresses. Okay? It now wants a name. You can call it anything you want. I like nice short names like Kali, so I'm going to leave that as is. It now wants a network or domain name. You can leave this blank. That's fine. I always use opsys.bit. You do not have to do that. This is just to pay respect to an instructor we had at Red River College who passed away a number of years, who used to teach Linux. This is the domain he used to use in his classes, and just by paying a little bit of homage to him, I reuse it. You don't have to use anything. All of our attacks are going to be based on IPs. The machine name doesn't matter. The network name does not matter, because everything is IP based in this course. Okay? So the domain name doesn't matter. The machine name doesn't matter. Click on continue. And now it wants to create a new user, just like we saw with Debian. So you need to give yourself a name. I'm just going to use, can't type today. I'm just going to use the user ID for my full name because it's just easier, all right? I don't have to type in my full name, and frankly, again, this is a hacker tool set. I'm not going to put anything real in here because most of the tools are probably fine, but this is a collection of hacker tools. I'm going to use it for hacking, but I'm not going to trust anything inside this environment because it is a collection of hacker tools. So you should always be suspicious of everything you type in to this virtual machine. I've never had any problems, but I always view it with suspicion, and I want you to do that as well for the entirety of your careers. Next semester, we're going to take a look at something called Remnux for doing malware analysis. It has a bunch of hacking tools designed for malware analysis. Exact same thing. Treat everything in Remnux with suspicion, just like you should treat everything in Kali with suspicion. Use it, but don't trust that it's not trying to trick you or steal your information or do something nefarious. Use it, but always be suspicious. So I'm just going to give a user ID and click on continue, and then that becomes the user ID for my account. Continue, and then it wants a password. And I'm going to do the same thing again. My password is going to be generic. Actually, this one I'm just going to make everything password. All right. I don't care if the Kali community figures out my password is password. I don't lose any secrets by using a really, really, really bad password, and I'm using this inside of a closed environment, so that's fine. Set up a simple password that you're comfortable with reusing, and continue. And if you note, it didn't ask us for a password for root. We do not log in as root. We use the sudo command in Kali. So we're in the central time zone. Click on continue. And then it's going to try and set up some disks for us. The defaults mostly are fine. Just like the defaults in VirtualBox were fine, the defaults here. It says, hey, how do you want to do this? I want to use the guided system, which will walk me through this wizard. So default, continue. There's only one option, so default, continue. It says, let's put everything in one big partition. That's fine for what we're doing here. Default, continue. And then it says, hey, this is what I'm recommending. 2 partitions, the primary partition to install Kali to, a swap partition, which is extra memory in case your RAM fills up. And is that fine? Default, continue. It is on this screen that you actually have to click on yes. Up to this point, it hasn't made any changes to your hard drive, and it's not even a hard drive. It's a file in Windows that it's about to change. At this point, though, it thinks it's about to format that old hard drive and install a whole new operating system. Again, it's just a file in Windows. It's not your hard drive. Anybody have any questions? So as far as it's concerned, it's going to change your hard drive. In reality, it's just an image on your hard drive, but it doesn't really know that. So it's saying, are you sure you want to make these changes? You must click yes and continue. It'll create the partitions. It'll format it in the extended for file system, and then it'll start copying files from the ISO onto that hard drive. You can always tell what's going on by watching the status bar down here, where I'm moving with my mouse. The red indicates writes. The green indicates reads for the hard drive. All right? If it's reading from the CD-ROM, it'll flash greens as it's reading from the CD-ROM. You see green flashes there. And the network will also flash if it's doing network read-writes. Red for receives, I can't remember, green and red. It'll flash green and red for network activity. And the next icon is USB. If you move your mouse around, you will see the USB flash. So you can always tell what's going on in the status bar. It's very handy to keep an eye on. It'll say how much processing its execution here. As it gets really busy, it gets up into the red zone. But you can watch everything in your status bar to know if it's hung up or if things are working. Okay? After a while, and it depends again on your subsystem, on your hard drive. I've got a pretty good solid state drive in this, so my install goes really fast. If you have the old hard drives that spin up and make noise, this might take a little longer. But at some point, it's going to say, hey, what do you want to install? And it's going to go out and download stuff from a server online. Now, historically, when you set up Debian, it would say, hey, what country and then what server in that country do you want to use? That's not the case with Kali. There's only one site on the internet that we're going to download our stuff from. So it knows where it's going. It just needs to know if there's any proxy information. Chances are, in your home, your proxy information is going to be blank. You're not going to have to set up anything here. Just like at the college, you wouldn't have to change any of these settings here. So leave this blank and continue. It'll go out, it'll download software from the Kali repository on the internet. And that's the offensive security file system. Offensive security has a server where they just serve up all of this stuff. They're the ones who support Kali. And offensive security, I'm pretty sure, is the one that made... No, that's Rapid 9. Never mind. Forget that.
Hi, Stephen.
Hello, Stephen.
Yeah. So Haresh was first and then Mohammed Faisal, you're second. Go ahead, Haresh.
Okay, so after that, I receive software selection. What to do?
You're breaking up, sir. Why don't you show me on your desktop?
Okay. Are you able to see my screen?
Not yet. It's just black.
Still
Okay, I
black?
can see it now. So at this point, I want you to wait, Haresh, okay? You're ahead of me, so you just
Okay.
wait right now, okay?
Okay.
Okay, so stop sharing. And Mohammed Faisal, go ahead and ask your question.
Same question I had.
Okay, so you guys are a little ahead of me. I was talking slow so that people could keep up with me.
No. Yeah, sorry to interrupt, but we got directly this. Like you have HTTP proxy. In my machine I haven't got that. I directly got this page, so that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, same I have.
Hello, Stephen.
I'm sorry, one sec, EB. I'm still working through what Harish and Mohammed Faisal were saying. Say that again, please. You keep breaking up. The traffic is bad.
So yeah. So after you said okay, after that directly I saw it displayed this particular screen.
Okay.
It hasn't show this HTTP proxy. That's why I'm asking. Yeah.
Okay. So
So I
that's
think
fine.
yeah.
That's fine. You may have downloaded a different, I may have linked the wrong one, but that's okay. We should all be at this spot. Everybody should now be at this spot. Mohammed Faisal, is that true?
Yeah, I'm at.
Okay. EB, you had a question. Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to contribute to what you were saying that we didn't like. I'm at the same spot
Okay.
where they are. Yeah, so
Okay.
that was just.
All right. So if we're all at the same spot, then it doesn't matter. I don't know why mine went on a different path. Maybe I downloaded the wrong one, but it doesn't really change anything. We should all be at this spot, and then we can just let it run, and we'll take a break, and we'll come back later. First off, there's a checkbox here that says selecting this item has no effect, and same with desktop and same with collection. Selecting this item has no effect. You have to select a graphical environment. I always recommend XFCE. It is lightweight, it uses less resources, and it's better inside of a virtual environment. If you choose GNOME, which is how you say that, it's not GNOME, it's GNOME, or KDE, Kali will run slower. If you select XFCE, Kali will run faster. So I always encourage people to select XFCE, which is the default, which is fine. I also encourage people to select large. That way they have all the tools so that they can just play with everything. It makes it a little bit bigger, but that's what I want you to do. So XFCE, select large. So that's what your environment should look like. And then you can click on continue.
We
Hello,
can't see your
Stephen.
screen anymore.
Yeah.
My God, because I stopped sharing. Thank you. Whoever's, EB, I think you said that. Thank you, EB. So, everybody sees me now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Yes.
So as I was saying, there's two categories. The desktop environment, selecting this item has no effect because it's like a category. So you can set or clear that, it doesn't matter. Same with the collection of tools. You can set or clear that, it doesn't matter. So I leave them selected and I select XFCE. XFCE is the most performance, it's the best performing desktop environment. It's much faster than GNOME or KDE. I say do not check GNOME or KDE, only check XFCE. It'll run faster, especially in a virtual environment. Also, for collections, I want you to select all of them. The default and the large should be checked so it all looks like that. Okay, so this is the tools that I want you to check in your environment. I just typed them, or I just pasted them in the chat in Teams. So once you have those checked, click on continue and it will start installing the software. Okay, some of you have slower internets. This will take some time. Okay, so follow along with what happens next and understand that it just needs to run through and complete. If it fails because you lose your internet connection, you have to start from the beginning and do it all again, because there is no recovery during these installs. If it loses, you can sometimes get really, really lucky and pick up where you left off during the installation, but you're never 100% sure if it did everything properly. If your installation crashes, if you're run out of hard drive space, if your internet drops, if something happens during the installation, don't try and recover. Go back into VirtualBox, select the virtual machine and select remove, and then delete all files. Okay, if you have a problem, right click on and it crashes, power it off, right click on the virtual machine, select remove, and then click on the delete all files. That will get rid of the VM, plus it'll clear off the files on your hard drive. And then start the process again. All right? It says I have a half hour to go. It's rather slow, but that's the problem with having everything on one environment. The problem with, so the benefit of using Debian and its environment is that there's a bunch of different machines, and when we do our install, it's never overwhelmed. The problem with installing with Kali is that it's very easy with all of us hitting one machine, and it's not designed to have classrooms hitting it all at once. It gets bogged down really, really easily. Okay? So we're going to let it run through. I'm going to pause. The longer you spend in information technology, information security, or whatever, the more and more frustrated you are going to become with watching progress meters. I swear I've given up years of my life watching progress meters go. The fortunate thing is at some point it does finish, as we see here. Okay? So we are, it's going through, and now it wants to install a bootloader. And this is not optional, okay? You have to have some kind of bootloader. It's one of those things that's required when you set up a computer in the PC world. Not so much with other environments. The Macs, I don't know about Macs that they necessarily have a bootloader. They have something like it. The classic Unix world, they have something else like it. The mobile devices, I don't think they have anything like that. But definitely in the PC world, which is what we're emulating here, the personal computer, the Intel or AMD type processor, on top of which you install something like Windows or Linux. In this environment, you have to have a bootloader. It gets called from the BIOS, and it calls the operating system. It loads the operating system. It's how PCs were made way, way, way back with the original IBM XT, like generations ago. The original IBM XT had a BIOS, they had a bootloader, which would then often turn around and call DOS, Microsoft DOS at the time. And that has carried forward in the PC world ever since. We are setting up Linux. We have to use something to boot into Ubuntu, into Kali, when we turn on this machine. And we're going to use the grub bootloader to do that. So do we want to install? We have no choice. We have to install the grub loader and continue. And because it's going to change the hard drive, now any bootloader in theory should work. The Windows bootloader doesn't work well, but it can be tricked into booting into Ubuntu. It doesn't work well, but because you can install Ubuntu, or specifically Kali, alongside of Windows on the hard drive, not as a virtual machine, but as a host operating system, it's saying, are you sure you want to change the bootloader information? Because, again, it's virtual, and because we have to have it installed, we do not select manual. We select the only other option that's available, and it's dev SDA. Your VirtualBox hard disk name is probably going to be different than mine. What's important is at the beginning it says dev SDA. We're installing the bootloader on that hard drive that we set up virtually in our virtual machine. So, yes, install grub, and then select the second option. You actually have to select a device. Do not enter device manually. Select a device and continue. Again, very similar.
We select
One sec. Very similar to what you saw with Debian. When you set up Debian, it was very similar to this. I'm sorry, Muhammad Faisal. Go ahead, sir.
We have to select yes or no to install.
You have to say yes. It should be default, but you have to say yes to install grub, and then on the next screen specify the partition. It's completed setting up grub. It now wants to reboot the system, and this can take some time as well. So at this point, click on continue, and what's going to happen is it's going to go through it. Well, no, it actually went quite quick. That's good. Historically, that step has taken some time, and then it will reboot into Kali Linux running on Ubuntu. This is the goal for today, is that you can see this and you log in with the credentials you defined when you first set it up. So in this case, my username is SJ and my password was password. When I click login, I want to see something like this. Don't worry about anything after this. Our network isn't set up properly. We're going to fix that. All right, this is what we want to see. We'll make it bigger, and then we can play with it, but this is the goal, that you have Kali by offensive security and you're logged in by the username that you defined when you set it up. Okay? This prompt is a little different than what you've seen in the past, but it's going to work for us, no problem. Any questions? Once you have these installed, do not just power them off. Do not do that, all right? I don't want anybody doing that. I want you to power off your virtual machine. In the upper right corner, there's a little logout button. When you click on that, you can select shutdown. Always shut down Kali. When it comes to the other virtual machines, I want you to try doing machine ACPI shutdown, okay? So I don't want you just powering off these virtual machines. Don't do that, it wrecks them. I want you to go machine ACPI shutdown. If it doesn't work, then you need to log in. In this case, we log in as MSF admin, MSF admin. Okay? It gives us the credentials right there. I typed something wrong. So MSF admin, MSF admin. So log in, it gave us the credentials, and then sudo halt. And then you have to type in the password again. And then it'll halt the system. So sometimes you don't have the password, and you should be able to do the Control H to shut it down. Most of the ones I give you, that's going to be fine. All right? If that doesn't work, I'll let this shut down and I'll show you another way of powering it off. If you can't log in, okay, see where it says system halted? Now you can power off the virtual machine. If, and I swear I'm going to end this right away, guys. If you can't log in and do the sudo halt command, another option that you can do, it's time sensitive, but you can do it. After it's booted up, go input, keyboard, insert Control-Alt-Delete. When you do that, it'll start powering down the virtual machine. Okay? If you can't do Control, or if you can't go machine ACPI shutdown, that doesn't work. If you can't log in and do sudo halt, that doesn't work. Go input, keyboard, insert Control-Alt-Delete, and it will reboot, and then you can power it off. Okay? Once it started rebooting, and once you saw this boot screen, hit the power button, and then you can power off the machine. Anything else will wreck the file system. So always shut down your virtual machines elegantly. Again, how did I do that? I'm going to show you the same thing in Debian. I could do machine ACPI shutdown with Debian. It will work. I can also log in and do the sudo halt, or I can log in as root and just type in halt. That would work. But let's say I don't have those options. Input, keyboard, insert Control-Alt-Delete. It will start powering down, and once I hit this screen, hit the power button in the upper right corner, power off the machine. And then it is elegantly shut down, and you're not going to corrupt your file system. Any questions on that? Okay, that's it for me for today. You've got a class in 10 minutes. Get ready for your next class.